Hey everyone, this is Brian Bollman back with another string review. And it's been quite a while, and it's especially been a while since we've done one of the big brands, one of the big boys. And today we will be going back to that by reviewing Babolat Origin. So the reason it's called Origin, tracing back to the roots, supposed to be another one of these revolutionary strings that performs like natural gut, but isn't natural gut. Something that you've heard time and time again. And normally, when I come across a string with those sorts of taglines, revolutionizing the string industry or revolutionary design, I always roll my eyes a little bit because ultimately it depends on how the string actually plays. So just because you've utilized some cutting edge technology doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily be a great string. And this has been a string that's been much hyped. If you've watched the Tennis Warehouse review, you'll know exactly what it is I'm talking about there. Is it a polyester? Is it a multi-filament? No, it's Babolat Origin. And I will say, I'll kind of cut to the chase. This is a pretty interesting string. Its performance, it's not going to be for everybody, of course, like always, but it is an interesting string that performs differently to, I think, anything I've tried before. I'm sure there are alternatives to it. Ashaway, Mono Gut, ZX, I think that's what it's called. Somebody I play with was talking to me about that string. I said, oh, that sounds a whole lot like Origin, so maybe you can check that one out. But in the meantime, we will be talking about Origin here. And according to Babolat, this is a string suitable for the players who they profile as A players, meaning these players are looking for power and comfort, and they are non-string breakers. The added benefit here is going to be power, obviously. That's the red thing there. And it's recommended that you string this between 48 and 66 pounds, or if you're working with kg, 22 to 30. That's a pretty big range, and you can string this one tight, and the performance is still good. And I can be living proof of that. I strung the Babolat Origin 16 gauge into this Babolat Pure Arrow. Did it at 59 pounds, which is the max of what this racket sort of says you should do. You could probably get away with going up to 61 or 62, but just to be safe, I kept it within the range at 59. And so I strung this in on October 18th. It is now November 6th or 7th. Haven't been playing with it as much as I would be playing in the summer, but still a decent amount of play. And you can see here that I didn't snap the strings back. And it's not too much string movement. So a lot of times with these like power first, or in the past power first multi-filament strings, something like Genesis Thunderblast, something like Gamma TNT, the strings, especially the main strings, have that tendency to just move all over the place. And that's one thing that drives me personally nuts. So I was pleasantly surprised with the fact that this string doesn't do that too much. It's starting to do it more, but I can't complain that much after 2 or 3 weeks. You'll also notice, and you probably can't see this, but the string is not fraying the way a multi-filament like Explosion, like Excel, like NXT would do, where there's like thousands of little microfibers and it starts to tear apart like in a way like natural gut, but obviously synthetic, until eventually it snaps and pops. This string is actually burning closer to what you would see with a synthetic gut, believe it or not. That's what it's looking like to me. The burn marks here are something you might see on a synthetic or potentially on a polyester. This was strung in at 59. It's holding tension pretty well, actually, so very much impressed. And let's get into the review. In the background, you will be seeing some examples of me playing with it, and you'll see my full stroke and also when I'm kind of abbreviating it, because this string definitely is going to be suitable for some players, or it's going to be suitable in particular configurations. The last thing I'd add is just if you want something very straight to the point, very focused, head over to brianbollmantennis.com. Go to the resources. I also have a link in the description of the video. You can read what I've written about this string, and it's much more straight to the chase, a little less stream of consciousness here. All right, so the construction for this string is polyamide, or maybe polyamide, monofilament. Okay, so when we think monofilament, what are we normally thinking? We're thinking like a polyester typically. And when we think polyamide, just from a quick Google search, like a synonym for that is nylon. And what do we associate nylon with? Synthetic gut. So it's like this odd gut polyester hybrid all in one here with Babolat origin. So what you need to know about this string is that it's supposed to give you the power of natural gut, but the ability to string in very tightly, something you could actually also do with natural gut. Typically, you don't have too many issues, but the playability and the durability especially should last you quite a bit longer. And so far, that has been true. The power from this string is remarkable. It is a very powerful string. And I found that on serve, even without really trying, it made a huge difference. Rarely do I try a string and sit down here and tell you like, yeah, this one stroke was completely different. That was true with this string on serve. Like I was able to hit all the spots. I was getting more spin, which is bizarre because from the ground, this does not do a great job with like topspin. It's not dipping the ball in at the last second. When I was hitting slice serves, kick serves, or hitting flat serves, the feel was fantastic. The power was great. Very little effort had to be put in to the serve, and it made a magnificent, magnificent difference. Very much gut-like in how it performs on serve. And in the power category in general, I think if we read the description, I always like to do this. If we read the description from Babolat and then try to cut through some of the marketing BS, we can get to some interesting stuff here. Babolat's origin string is a very unique monofilament. For starters, it's not a polyester, though it offers impressive control. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. Made of a highly innovative natural polyamide. Do they exist naturally? This string delivers a comfortably crisp response with wonderful dwell time and great feel. So dwell time meaning like ball pocketing, not necessarily meaning snap back, right? So we think about dwell time, like with natural gut, the ball comes in, sits nicely, propels out, more of the trampoline effect. Polyesters, when you're coming from the side, a lot of movement in the main strings, and the snapback effect is what you get. Like natural gut, this one is very responsive and comfortable at higher tensions. Players looking for a unique blend of precision, spin, comfort, and controllable power should love this one. So that basically would lead you to believe this string is for everybody. And I wouldn't say that's true. The biggest issue I had was going for a big shot, taking a very fast swing. A lot of them would just fly long, where with a polyester or with a polyester multi or polyester synthetic hybrid, those balls probably wouldn't fly long. They would dip in at the last second. So I was always nervous to really take a full swing with this because I didn't trust it was going to go into the court. Now, that's me personally, and you can look at the playtest and see the way that I swing. If you have a much more controlled swing, something a little more abbreviated, this might work out great for you in a full bed. And I think for players who don't necessarily want to pay for natural gut, they don't want to take that risk, and at the same time, they're not really having arm problems, this is not a bad string to at least try out in the meantime. I don't really think the feel is all that great. I actually prefer the feel of like Babolat Synthetic Gut. Of all natural guts, I prefer the feel too. Of most multi-filaments, I even prefer the feel too, especially when it comes to ground strokes and volleys. Like I think that where this racket actually performed the worst for me was on volleys, which is odd because you would think that if it does well on serve, you should be able to really crisply go up there and hit volleys. A lot of this stuff was just flying long. Like the dwell time was a bit too long for me anyway to handle. Maybe I'd get used to it over time, but that was the one area where I really felt like it was lacking. From the ground, it performs pretty well, but you can't take that massive swing at the ball. It's not going to reward you if you're taking a huge cut at the ball. Can't get a lot of topspin, not a lot of late movement like you would get with a polyester. Speaking of polyesters, where do I think that this string would really excel for a higher level player? Definitely it's going to be in a hybrid configuration, and especially true if you enjoy using shaped or coated polyesters in your mains. So something like Babolat RPM Blast Rough, something like Twisted Razor from Genesis, something like True Grit. There are now a ton of these strings, and there's a ton of shaped options also. And you really can't go in, or you shouldn't be going in, with natural gut in the cross if you're using something shaped or coated in the main, because really all you're doing is just like sawing away that natural gut, and it usually tends to break down pretty quick. This is not natural gut, right? This has more of the feel of like a synthetic gut or a polyester when you touch it. So with that in mind, you could definitely go in a hybrid there, and I think it's going to last for you. This string has been durable for me thus far, and in a cross, it's going to last even longer. These crosses have moved very, very little. So for players with bigger strokes, this may be a great option for a cross if you're trying to get a lot more power, but still have the control of the polyester. The downside, and I'll keep coming back to this, the downside is going to be feel or like pop. I didn't really find that it gave me that nice sort of feedback that I get when I use something like a Babolat Synthetic Gut. This is going to play a lot consistently for longer. The performance is going to be better. It's just a question of how highly do you value feel in that response and the sound. I'm a weird person. Like, I like hearing that nice crisp sound off the racket. I don't really like the twangy type sound. And at the start when using this string, it was a little bit twangy coming off of the string bed. Eventually it settled down a little bit. So let's see, is there anything else that really needs to be said about this string? I'm trying to think. Oh yes, the one other thing I should mention is just tension. The fact that you can take this thing and string it very tight if you want to do that. You can get away with it here, where with some strings of this design, that's just not really possible. The tension is held up quite well, at least for me. And I think if you know what you're trying to get out of your game, or like you understand the technology you're using, you should have no problem like finding a nice balance for this string. For example, this is considered like a very low powered racket, right? It takes a fast swing. And so with that in mind, I have to generate most of the power. If I'm incapable of generating that power, I probably shouldn't be using the racket number one, or I would use a power first string like this, but probably still string it in there pretty tight. If you're a player who is already using like a high powered racket and you're still struggling to hit the ball deep, you would probably go in and put the tension a little bit lower so you get more of that dwell time, more of that sort of effect off the racket. And if you find that it's actually still too much power for you, this would be an interesting string to try going origin in the mains and some kind of a polyester, like RPM, something soft, something comfortable in the crosses. So like that Federer setup, how he goes natural gut mains and goes Luxilon crosses. This is a string you could actually try that with and see if it works, because for me personally, I like the power that this string affords, but it's too much power. Like, I need to try and temper that power. Would I probably do that? Would I actually go with this string in the mains and a polyester in the cross? I probably wouldn't, only because I know that natural gut is going to perform better in that sort of a configuration, and I wouldn't mind spending a little bit of extra money to do that. But it's something to definitely experiment with and something to try at the very least. So finally, the cost of this string, this is kind of the major bummer here, it's $22 a set. And if it lasts for 4 or 5 months, I guess you could justify that, but it is on the high end as far as the string goes. So it's a good performing string, tons and tons of power. I don't really find that you can get a ton of spin off it, especially topspin from the back. You will be driving through a lot of these balls. You're really gonna have to try to work it if you wanna get that spin on there. Not gonna have a ton of late movement for you either. But if power is something you need, this is a string to try. I'm not just saying that, I really believe it. There's a lot of power on this. You sacrifice a little bit when it comes to feel, but obviously you can't have it all. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. And again, for specifics really hammered out, head over to brianbollmantennis.com, where I've written these things a lot more clearly. But thank you so much for watching. And until next time, get out on the courts.